My daughter called. I sold your beach house and your Carmen without my permission. She thought I wouldn't do anything, that grief would leave me weak. But what she didn't know was that I was prepared. And when she returned, she was the one who found everything different, including the mother she thought she knew. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. The silence in the house seemed heavier since Richard passed away. Martha walked through the rooms with slow steps, touching objects that still held his scent, the essence of 50 years of companionship. At 71, she never imagined she would be alone again, like in her girlhood days, when life was still a frightening unknown. "Mom, you can't stay like this, isolating yourself." Melissa's voice cut through the morning silence. The 45-year-old daughter entered the living room carrying a tray with coffee and bread. "I brought your breakfast. You didn't even touch your dinner last night." Martha observed her daughter with tired eyes. Since the funeral, Melissa had installed herself in the house, claiming concern. She slept in the guest room, cooked, cleaned, organized appointments. A dedication that little by little began to awaken a strange feeling in the widow's chest. "Thank you, dear." Martha accepted the cup, noticing how Melissa watched her every movement, every expression. "You don't need to sacrifice yourself for me. Scott must be missing you." "Scott understands, Mom. He knows you need me now." Melissa sat on the sofa, very close. "By the way, we need to talk about some practical matters." Martha's heart tightened. There was something in her daughter's tone, a formality that didn't match the time of mourning. "What kind of things, Melissa?" "Well, you know, Dad left many pending issues. The beach house, the car, the accounts." Melissa fidgeted with her hands while speaking, avoiding direct eye contact. "I was thinking it would be better to simplify your life. You're at an age where you shouldn't worry about so many details." Martha drank her coffee slowly, feeling a bitterness that didn't come from the beverage. Richard always said she was very observant, that she could read people like an open book. At that moment, her daughter's pages seemed written in invisible ink, but she was beginning to decipher some words. "The beach house is special to me, Melissa. Your father and I spent the best moments there." "I know, Mom, but think about it. Will you be able to take care of everything alone, the maintenance, the expenses, the distance?" Melissa moved closer, holding her mother's hand. "I could help you get rid of these things that only bring work." "Get rid of?" Martha repeated the expression, feeling a chill down her spine. "Sell, Mom. For a good price, of course, and use the money for your comfort, so you can have a peaceful old age without worries." The word old age echoed in Martha's chest like a punch. She didn't feel old despite being 71. Richard always treated her as an equal partner, never as someone incapable or limited. The difference in treatment was glaring. "I need to think, dear." Of course, but don't take too long, okay? I already talked to a really good realtor who makes honest deals. He said the real estate market is hot for coastal homes." Martha swallowed hard. Melissa had already talked to a realtor, without even mentioning it to her first. "You've already moved forward with something?" "I just tested the market, Mom, so we don't miss opportunities." Melissa smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "You know how I worry about your well-being." That afternoon, while Melissa went out to take care of some things in town, Martha went up to what had been Richard's bedroom. On his nightstand were still his reading glasses, blood pressure medication, and a sealed envelope with her name on it. Martha had seen Richard writing in his final days, but respected his privacy. Now, with trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a 2-page letter in his careful handwriting, and several other sheets with information that left her breathless. "My dear Martha," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer physically by your side, but know that my love and protection remain with you. I need to tell you some things I've kept all these years, not out of distrust, but out of love. You've always been stronger than you imagine, and now you'll need all that strength." Martha continued reading, tears blurring her vision. Richard wrote about investments he had made silently, about a company they had built together without her knowing, about equity stakes that were in her name. The man she thought was simple and uncomplicated had spent decades building considerable wealth. "The house where Melissa lives, the apartment she thinks Scott is renting, is actually ours. The entire building is ours, my love. I never told you because I wanted our daughter to learn the value of things, to build her own path. But now you need to know everything. The following pages contain detailed information, account numbers, registry office addresses, names of lawyers, a veritable financial protection network that Richard had woven over the years. Martha discovered that she wasn't just a simple widow facing the difficulties of grief, but the sole heir to a heritage that included real estate, stakes in companies, and various investments. Be careful with our daughter, Martha. Not because she's bad, but because she never learned to value what she has. She may try to take advantage of your pain. Be firm. Be wise. Use this heritage to protect your heart and to teach her the true value of things. When Melissa returned late in the afternoon, Martha was on the porch, still absorbing everything she had discovered. Her daughter arrived excited, carrying shopping bags. "Mom, I bought some sweets you like, and look, I found that special shampoo for gray hair you were looking for." Melissa set the bags on the table, kissed her mother's forehead. "How was your afternoon?" "Peaceful," Martha replied, observing how her daughter avoided mentioning where she had been, who she had spoken with. "And yours?" "Oh, ran after some boring bureaucracy. Nothing much." Melissa sat next to her mother, taking her hand. "Mom, I was thinking, how about you give me power of attorney? That way I could resolve these practical issues without bothering you." Martha felt her heart race. A power of attorney would mean Melissa could make decisions in her name, sell assets, move accounts. Exactly what Richard had predicted in the letter. "Power of attorney for what, specifically?" "To make your life easier, Mom. Imagine you having to leave the house, deal with registry offices, banks, all that boring bureaucracy. I can take care of it for you." Martha took a deep breath, remembering her husband's words about being firm and wise. "I need to think carefully, Melissa. These are important decisions. But Mom, it's nothing complicated. It's just a way for me to help you better." Irritation showed through in Melissa's voice, quickly disguised by a forced smile. "Don't you trust me?" "It's not a question of trust, dear. It's that I need to better understand the whole situation before making any decision." Melissa was silent for a few seconds, and Martha could see the gears working in her daughter's mind. There was something there that wasn't showing, an urgency hidden behind the apparent concern. That night, after Melissa retired to her room, Martha called Mr. Anderson, the lawyer Richard had mentioned in the letter. She scheduled a discreet meeting for the next day, when Melissa would be busy. She needed to understand exactly what situation she was in before taking any step. Meanwhile, in the guest room, Melissa was speaking quietly on the phone with Scott. "She's resisting more than I expected. It might take a little longer to get the power of attorney." There was a pause. "I know we need the money urgently, Scott, but I can't push too hard. She might get suspicious." Martha, who had gone to get a glass of water in the kitchen, heard fragments of the conversation and silently returned to her room. The puzzle was beginning to form in her mind, and the pieces didn't create a pretty picture. The next day, Melissa announced she needed to resolve some issues at the bank and would return in the late afternoon. Martha took the opportunity to meet Mr. Anderson at his office, taking all the documents Richard had left. Mr. Anderson's office was in an old building downtown, full of law books and the smell of old paper that Martha associated with seriousness. The lawyer, a 60-year-old man with grey hair and kind eyes, received her with the respect of someone who knew Richard well. "Mrs. Martha, my condolences for the loss of Richard. He was an exceptional man." Mr. Anderson led her to a comfortable armchair. "I imagine you found the letter he asked me to help him write." "Doctor, I had no idea about any of this." Martha showed the documents, still trying to assimilate the magnitude of what she had discovered. "Richard never told me about these investments, this company. He wanted to protect you, Mrs. Martha. In recent years, Richard noticed some strange movements around the family. People too interested in your assets." The lawyer organized the papers on the desk. "He came to me 6 months ago, specifically concerned about your daughter." Martha's heart tightened. "Melissa? But what did Richard discover?" "Nothing concrete, just signs. Questions about inheritances, comments about your age, suggestions about simplifying your financial life." Mr. Anderson paused, carefully choosing his words. "Your husband asked me to prepare complete legal protection for your assets, leaving everything very well documented and protected." Martha listened attentively as the lawyer explained the equity structure. The holding company of which she was the sole controlling partner, the properties registered in her name, The bank accounts, the investments. Richard had built a silent empire, always thinking of her future. And the beach house, sir? It has been registered in your name for 10 years, as well as the car your daughter mentioned. Richard anticipated that someone might try to convince you to get rid of these assets. Mr. Anderson showed her the documents. Any sale made without your express authorization would be completely illegal. Martha felt a chill down her spine. Sir, Melissa mentioned she's already talked to a realtor about the beach house. Talked or signed something? I don't know. She said she was testing the market. Mr. Anderson frowned. Mrs. Martha, I need to be direct with you. Your husband gave me specific instructions in case someone tried to move these assets without your authorization. We'll monitor any strange movement. When Martha returned home in the middle of the afternoon, she found Melissa agitated, pacing back and forth in the living room. Mom, where were you? I came home and the house was empty. I was worried. I went out for some air, dear. I went to the park, walked a little. Martha observed her daughter's nervousness. You seem tense. Did something happen? No. It's just that... Melissa hesitated, fidgeting with her hands. Mom, that realtor I mentioned yesterday called. He found a very interested buyer for the beach house, a family from New York who wants to close the deal quickly. Martha sat down slowly in Richard's favorite armchair. That's fast, don't you think? It's because the market is very hot, Mom, and the house is beautiful, well located. The man even offered to make a proposal without even visiting the property. Interesting. Martha kept her voice calm, but inside she felt a mixture of disappointment and astonishment. And what would this proposal be? Melissa became animated, interpreting the question as interest. $200,000 in cash, Mom. Just imagine $200,000 that you can invest in something more practical, safer. Martha knew the property's value well. Richard always commented that the house was worth at least $500,000, especially after the renovations they had done. $200,000 was less than half the real value. It's an interesting proposal, but I'd like to evaluate it better. Mom, the problem is that they want an answer by tomorrow. If we lose this opportunity... Melissa approached, holding her mother's hands. I already told them you were interested. Martha gently removed her hands. You said what? That you were considering the sale. Don't worry, I didn't sign anything. But they were very excited. Melissa, I never said I was interested in selling the house. But Mom, yesterday you said you'd think about simplifying your life. Martha realized how Melissa distorted her words, creating interpretations that favored her objectives. Thinking doesn't mean agreeing, dear. The rest of the afternoon was tense. Melissa tried several different approaches. She mentioned the maintenance expenses of the house, talked about the insecurity of having empty properties, even commented on Martha's advanced age and how difficult it would be for her to take care of so many assets. That night, Martha pretended to go to bed early, but stayed listening. Melissa made several calls, all in a tone of urgency. Scott, she's being more difficult than we expected. I know you already spent the travel money, but you'll have to wait. No, I can't push more. She might suspect something. One of the calls was to someone named Brian, apparently the realtor. Brian, I need one more day. She's hesitating. I know your buyer is in a hurry, but I can't work miracles. What do you mean you already prepared the documentation? I told you to wait. Martha heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly lay down, pretending to sleep. Melissa slightly opened the bedroom door, observed for a few seconds, and returned to her room. The next day, Melissa woke up early and prepared a special breakfast: pancakes, fresh fruit, natural orange juice. Good morning, Mom. I slept thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I think I found a perfect solution. Martha accepted the plate, suspicious of her daughter's excessive enthusiasm. What solution, Melissa? What if we sold just the beach house and kept Dad's car? That way you keep a memento of him, but get rid of the property that gives you the most work. Martha almost choked on her pancake. Richard's car was a simple model over 10 years old. The beach house was where they had lived the happiest moments of their marriage. Melissa, why this sudden urgency to sell your father's things? It's not urgency, Mom. It's practicality. Do you have the age to be worrying about these things? There it was again, the age issue, used as an argument to invalidate her decision-making capacity. Martha felt an anger growing in her chest, an anger she hadn't felt for a long time. I'm 71, Melissa, not 101. My mind is perfectly clear. I know, Mom, of course I know. It's just that... Melissa stopped, realizing she had touched a sensitive point. Sorry, that's not what I meant. At that moment, the phone rang. Melissa answered quickly, but Martha could hear the altered voice on the other end of the line. It was a male voice, speaking loudly and nervously. "Brian, calm down. I'm trying. What do you mean you already passed the documentation to the registry office? I said it wasn't decided yet." Melissa looked at Martha with desperation in her eyes. "No, she hasn't signed anything yet." "You did this on your own." Martha slowly rose from the table. "Melissa, hang up that phone." "Mom, it's just a misunderstanding. Hang up the phone." Martha's voice came out firmer than she herself expected. Melissa hung up, her hands trembling. "Mom, I can explain." "Then explain, and this time I want the complete truth." Melissa collapsed in the chair, the weight of the situation finally falling on her. With tears in her eyes, she began to tell about the debts she and Scott had incurred, about the expensive trip that was already paid for and couldn't be cancelled, about the pressure from creditors. "Mom, we're desperate. Scott invested our money in a company that went bankrupt. I lost my job last month. When Dad passed away, I thought you could help us, that we could solve this quickly, and no one would be harmed." Martha listened to everything in silence, feeling a deep sadness, not for her daughter's financial situation, but for the way she had tried to solve the problem, lying, manipulating, taking advantage of her grief. "Melissa, why didn't you simply ask me for help? Because I knew you would give me a lecture, would want to know everything, would treat me like an irresponsible child." "And isn't that exactly what you are?" Martha's question echoed through the kitchen like thunder. Melissa was silent, tears streaming down her face, unable to deny the obvious. For the first time in a long time, mother and daughter looked at each other without masks, without games of appearance. "Mom, Melissa began, but her voice failed. "You what, Melissa? Thought I was senile? That you could deceive me because I'm grieving?" Martha approached her daughter not with anger, but with deep sadness. "So do you think your parents were fools their entire lives?" Before Melissa could answer, the phone rang again. This time Martha answered. It was Brian, the realtor, with an aggressive and impatient voice. "Mrs. Martha, this is Brian Roberts, real estate agent. Your daughter authorized me to prepare the documentation for the sale of the beach house. I need you to come to the registry office today to sign the papers." "I didn't authorize any sale," Martha responded firmly. "What do you mean? Your daughter said you agreed." "Look, I already have a buyer with money in hand. The documentation is ready. You can't back out now." "I can and I will. This sale is not going to happen." "You can't do this to me. I have costs, commitments made." The man's voice was altered. "Your daughter guaranteed me it would be just a formality." Martha hung up the phone and looked at Melissa, who was pale. "Melissa, did you sign anything in my name?" "No, I swear I didn't sign anything. I just said you were considering—" The phone rang again. This time it was Scott, desperate. "Martha, for God's sake, you need to help us. Melissa told me you don't want to sell the house, but we've already spent the travel money. Everything is already paid for." "Scott, you spent money you didn't have." "But I was sure you would help us. Melissa said it would just be a matter of time." Martha hung up again, feeling immense fatigue. For the next few hours, the phones didn't stop ringing. Brian called, making veiled threats about lawsuits. Scott alternated between desperate pleas and accusations of insensitivity. Melissa was in the middle, trying to mediate the situation without taking responsibility. In the late afternoon, an elegant woman appeared at the door. She introduced herself as Ms. Jennifer Wilson, a specialist in inheritance law. "Mrs. Martha, I heard about the delicate situation you're going through. I came to offer my services to resolve this issue in the best way for everyone." Martha immediately became suspicious. "Who told you about our situation?" "Oh, you know how it is. In a small town, news travels fast. The important thing is that I can help you resolve everything in a practical and quick way." The woman entered without being invited, spreading papers on the living room table. "Look, I prepared some documents that will greatly simplify your life. A comprehensive power of attorney for your daughter, a deed of assignment for the assets that are generating unnecessary expenses." "I didn't ask for your help." Martha kept her voice firm. "Mrs. Martha, with all due respect, you're at an age where these decisions become very heavy. It's natural that you want to get rid of these worries. The lawyer spoke in a condescending tone that deeply irritated Martha. "Your daughter only wants your well-being." "My daughter wants money. Oh my, a dedicated daughter like Melissa who left her life to take care of you." The woman continued with her paternalistic speech, treating Martha as if she were a confused child. Martha stood up. "Miss Wilson, I don't know you. I didn't request your services, and I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Mrs. Martha, you're being very hasty. These decisions need to be made calmly, with professional guidance. Get out of my house." The woman left reluctantly, but not before leaving the papers on the table. "When you change your mind, you can call me. I'll leave my card." Melissa, who had watched everything in silence, finally spoke. "Mom, the lawyer is right about some things. Maybe it would be better to simplify." "Melissa, tell me something. Did you arrange for that woman to come here?" Melissa lowered her eyes. "Brian knows her, said she could help resolve the situation." Martha felt she was being surrounded by people who saw her as easy prey. An elderly widow, weakened by grief, with assets to be exploited. The anger she felt transformed into cold determination. That night, while Melissa slept, Martha called Mr. Anderson. "Sir, I need your urgent help. They're trying to pressure me from all sides." "Mrs. Martha, I was expecting this to happen. Your husband gave me very precise instructions for this situation." The lawyer's voice sounded calm. "Tomorrow morning, I want you to come to my office. We are going to take some preventive measures. And if they try to do something before that, any document signed without your express authorization, any sale made in your name, will be considered fraud. I already have everything prepared to protect you legally." The next day, Melissa woke up agitated. She had spent the night on the phone with Scott, who was on the other side of the ocean in full crisis. "Mum, Scott is desperate. The creditors are demanding payment. The trip is costing more than we planned." "Where exactly did you go?" "Europe, France, Italy. It was our dream honeymoon." Melissa spoke with bitter nostalgia. "We spent 20 years dreaming about this trip, saving money. And you spent it all at once?" "Scott said it was an investment in our happiness, that we deserved it." Melissa's voice broke. "He said that when we returned, we would find a way to replace the money." Martha began to understand the dimension of the problem. It wasn't just a matter of financial irresponsibility, but of two adults who had created a fantasy and were now facing reality. "Melissa, do you have any idea how much you spent?" $50,000. The answer came as a whisper. Martha swallowed hard. It was exactly 1/4 of the real value of the beach house. "And where did you get that money?" "Scott borrowed it from some acquaintances of his, said it was a sure investment." Melissa was crying now. "He promised he would pay it back quickly when we returned." "What kind of acquaintances, Melissa?" Her daughter's silence was eloquent. Martha understood that the situation was even more serious than she had imagined. Scott had gotten involved with loan sharks, people who didn't wait long to collect their debts. At that moment, the phone rang. It was Scott, with a desperate voice. "Martha, I need to talk to you. Melissa, pass the phone to your mother." Martha took the device. "Hi, Scott." "Martha, I messed up everything." His voice was choked. "I thought it would work out, that you would help us, that it would be easy to resolve." "Scott, where are you?" "In a cheap hotel in Rome." "Martha, they took my credit card, froze my account. I don't even have money to return to the United States." Martha was silent, absorbing the information. Scott was stuck in Europe without money while in the US. Creditors were demanding a debt he couldn't pay. "Martha, are you still there?" "I'm here, Scott. For God's sake, help me. Sell anything, take out a loan, but get me out of this situation. I promise I'll pay everything back when I return." Martha looked at Melissa, who was listening to the conversation with desperation in her eyes. For the first time, her daughter was realizing the real dimension of the problems they had created. "Scott, I need to think." "There's no time to think. They're threatening me, Martha. If I don't get the money by tomorrow, they who? The guys who lent me the money. They found out where I am, sent some contacts here to look for me." Martha hung up the phone, feeling real fear for the first time. The situation had completely spiraled out of control, and now dangerous people were involved. Martha looked at Melissa, who was trembling after Scott's call. Her daughter seemed to have aged 10 years in a few minutes, finally understanding the gravity of the situation they had created. "Mom, what are we going to do?" Melissa held her mother's hands, and for the first time in a long time, Martha saw her daughter genuinely vulnerable, without masks or manipulations. "First, we're going to Mr. Anderson. I need to understand exactly what my legal situation is." Martha picked up her purse, determined. "And then we're going to resolve this the right way." At the lawyer's office, Martha finally had the full dimension of the wealth Richard had built. Besides the beach house and the car, there were 3 rented apartments, stakes in 2 prosperous companies, a considerable savings account, and investments in real estate funds. "Mrs. Martha, you are a very wealthy woman." Mr. Anderson showed the statements and documents. "Your husband spent decades building this financial security for you." Melissa was shocked to discover that her mother, whom she judged to be a simple and dependent widow, was actually a woman with sufficient resources to solve any financial problem the family might have. "Sir, what about those creditors who are threatening my son-in-law? We'll investigate the legality of these collections. If they were loans with abusive interest rates or illegal practices, we can annul the contracts." Mr. Anderson made some notes. "But first, I need your daughter to tell me exactly what happened." Melissa, between tears, told the whole truth. Scott had met Brian, the realtor, in a bar. Brian boasted of having rich and vulnerable clients, especially elderly widows, who could be convinced to sell properties for values below market price. Scott saw there an easy opportunity to get quick money. Brian had introduced Scott to a loan shark who posed as an investor, offering hassle-free loans for business opportunities. Scott borrowed $50,000, promising to pay back with interest in 3 months, believing he would quickly convince Martha to sell the beach house. "Mum, when Dad passed away, I saw only an opportunity," Melissa cried as she spoke. "I thought you would be fragile, dependent, that it would be easy to convince you to simplify your life. I never imagined that I had my own personality," Martha completed, but without bitterness in her voice. Mr. Anderson interrupted. "Mrs. Martha, I have a proposal. Your husband authorized me to take some drastic measures if the situation reached this point. I can solve your son-in-law's problem, but it will be a harsh lesson for both of them." "What kind of lesson?" "We'll pay his debt, but through a work contract. He'll work for your company to pay off what he owes, without interest. And your daughter will need to learn the real value of money." Martha spent the rest of the day thinking. That night, she had a long conversation with Melissa about life, responsibility, and the choices everyone makes. For the first time in years, they really listened to each other. "Melissa, do you know why your father never told you about our wealth?" "Because you didn't trust me." "No. Because we wanted you to build your own dignity." Martha took her daughter's hand. "Money without character is just paper. Character without money is still character." The next morning, Martha called Scott. "Scott, I'll resolve your situation, but with conditions." "Anything, Martha. I'll accept anything. You'll return to the United States. You'll work in one of the family companies until you pay off your debt. No interest, but also no salary beyond what's necessary for your basic expenses. It will take 2 years. 2 years? Scott's voice trembled. You spent $50,000 in 2 weeks of travel. You'll need 2 years to learn the value of that money. Scott accepted without options. Martha activated Mr. Anderson, who quickly resolved the situation with the creditors. It was discovered that they were indeed disguised loan sharks, and their practices were illegal. Instead of paying the full debt, Martha negotiated a much lower value, threatening to report the fraudulent scheme. Brian, the realtor, was also investigated. It was discovered that he had a history of taking advantage of vulnerable people. Martha decided not to sue him, but ensured he was professionally exposed. Ms. Jennifer Wilson, who had tried to pressure Martha into signing documents, turned out to be Brian's accomplice. She was also reported to the professional board. When Scott returned to the United States 3 weeks later, he was different. Thin, humble, with the look of someone who had been through a traumatic experience. "Martha, I have no words to thank you. You don't need to thank me, you need to work." Scott began working in one of Martha's companies in the cleaning sector. Every day, from 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening, learning the value of sweat and time. Melissa, initially outraged by her husband's situation, gradually began to understand the lesson. Martha offered her daughter a job in the administration of the family properties. Melissa, do you want to learn how to really build wealth? During the following months, Melissa discovered a world she didn't know. She learned about investments, property administration, relationships with tenants, property maintenance. She discovered that she had inherited from Richard an intelligence for business that she had never explored. Mum, why did you never teach me these things before? Because you never showed interest in learning. You only wanted ready results. A year later, Melissa was already efficiently managing 2 family properties. Scott continued working, but now as a supervisor, having proven his dedication. The couple had moved to a smaller apartment, more suitable for their new financial reality, but paradoxically, they were happier than before. The beach house was transformed into a special project. Martha decided to create a support center there for women who had gone through difficult situations, complicated divorces, widowhood, job loss. A place where they could recover and relearn to have confidence in themselves. Mum, this idea is brilliant. Melissa was excited about the project. We can offer vocational courses, psychological support, even legal advice. Martha smiled. She finally saw in her daughter the woman she had always known she could be. Melissa, do you want to be the project coordinator? Me? But Mom, I don't have experience with this type of social work. You have experience with falling, and those who have fallen know how to help others get up. The center was inaugurated 2 years later, with Melissa as coordinator and Scott taking care of maintenance and security. The place served about 30 women monthly, offering everything from computer courses to group therapy. Martha, at 73, discovered a new passion, being a mentor. She herself conducted lectures on financial and emotional independence, always using her own story as an example. I spent 50 years being protected by my husband, she would say to the women who sought her out. When he left, I discovered I was stronger than I imagined. You are too. One afternoon, Melissa found her mother on the porch of the beach house, observing a group of women participating in a crafts workshop in the garden. Mum, do you regret being so hard on us? Martha thought for a moment. Melissa, if I had given you the money when you asked, would you have learned anything? No. Would Scott have changed? No. And would these women down there have a place to restart their lives? Melissa smiled. No. Then I don't regret it. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not making the path easier. That night, mother and daughter had dinner together on the porch, watching the sea. Melissa had brought her 5-year-old son, born after the couple's reconciliation. The boy was playing with the sand while the 2 women talked. Mum, what will you leave for Tommy when the time comes? Martha observed her grandson, who was building a sandcastle with determination. I'll leave the example. Let him build his own money. Melissa laughed. You haven't changed at all, have you? Yes, I have. I learned that protecting doesn't mean hiding the truth, and that teaching doesn't mean making things easier. 3 years after the transformation, the family had become an example in the town. The support center was a regional reference. Melissa had become a respected businesswoman. Scott had discovered a talent for leadership and had been promoted to general manager of one of the companies. Martha, at 75, remained active, managing her businesses and guiding women who sought to restart their lives. She had found a purpose that went far beyond simply accumulating wealth. On the last Sunday of December, the family gathered at the beach house for a special celebration. The center had been recognized by the state government as a model of social inclusion. During dinner, Martha made a toast. Richard, wherever you are, know that I kept my promise. I protected our heritage, but more important than that, I protected our family. Melissa and Scott learned that dignity isn't inherited, it's built, and our grandson will grow up seeing that the true value of things isn't in the price, but in what we do with them. Melissa held her mother's hand. Mum, thank you for not giving up on me. Daughter, parents don't give up. Sometimes they seem harsh, sometimes they seem distant, but they never give up. As the family celebrated, Martha looked out the window and saw the calm sea reflecting the stars. She felt Richard's presence, the silent approval of the man who had built not just financial wealth, but a legacy of values that would pass to future generations. The beach house, which had almost been sold for a fraction of its value, was now the symbol of a rebuilt family, of strengthened women, and of a love that knew how to be firm when it needed to be. The end of the story, Dear listeners, we hope the story of Martha, Melissa, and Scott has deeply touched your hearts. This narrative teaches us that true love sometimes needs to be firm, that wisdom can come disguised as harshness, and that it's never too late to start over with dignity. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Your comments are very important to us. Tell us how you felt following this journey of family transformation. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life, the challenges of family relationships, and the strength that exists within each of us. Don't miss our upcoming content, where we will continue exploring the mysteries of the human heart and the lessons that life teaches us. Until the next story.